This is John Woodman, Springfield Computer Guy. We're continuing our examination of the long-form birth certificate that was posted on the White House website, and we're going to try to move quick here, so hang on. The next item to look at is the fact that there are no text layers in this document at all. If it was created by a human being, then any text layers were converted into graphics. This would have presumably been done so that a forgery would not be easily detected. But if a forger had done this, then he or she would not have had any reason to do anything except get rid of the layers altogether and release a flat file. So that theory makes no sense. And it's about to make no sense in another way that we'll get to in a minute. If a machine created the layers for the purpose of optimizing the document, then it makes sense that there would be no text layers. Let's look at solid pixels in the fonts. These are in almost all of the text image, both in the typewritten and in the text that appears on the form itself. In order for a human being to create the solid pixels that you see everywhere, there are two possibilities. One, they could have been physically drawn. But that's an absurd proposition. It would have taken just an enormous amount of time, probably weeks, to do this and to do it accurately. There is a general principle at work here. Just because something's possible doesn't mean that it's practical. And if a human being has got the choice between spending literally weeks to do a particular job and producing an absolute disaster in the process, both technically and politically, versus spending just a few minutes to do the same job and getting really good results, then that person would have to be literally insane to pick the first option. Second possibility, they could have been scanned in and run through some process that made all the pixels either black or white. But why would a person do this? That doesn't make any sense either. Particularly, it doesn't make any sense to have some pixels all different shades of gray and other pixels all black and white, like we see here. The AL is different shades of gray. Everything else we see here is black and white, except when we get over to the H here, it's different shades of gray again. Why would a person do that? It only arouses suspicion. Does it make sense for a computer software program to have produced the solid black pixels? Well, it would make sense if doing so produced a better optimized document. And the goal here would be a smaller file. The fact is that if you have a bunch of pixels that are all the same exact color, then all you need is a note of what that color is, plus the location of every pixel that's that color, and then you can save a lot of space over having to write down in the file the location of the pixel plus a separate color for each and every individual pixel. So that gives a very good reason for a software program to make all of these pixels the same color. Optimization. Let's talk about general irregularity of the fonts, especially the typewritten information. You can look and see that these O's aren't the same. These L's aren't the same. The U's aren't the same. And most of the letters, you're not going to find one that's identical to it. Now again, a human being would either have had to hand draw all of these letters, almost a pixel at a time, and do so accurately, or scan the document in and run some process on it. It would have taken a tremendous artist to hand draw the typewritten characters and make them look right. So the only possible conclusion is that the typewritten part, one way or another, was scanned. But if the typewritten part was scanned, then the rest of it must have been scanned as well. It wouldn't have made any sense to only scan the typewritten part and hand draw kind of the rest of it. So the human hypothesis collapses again. The appearance of these fonts, including the typewritten ones, is consistent with our other idea, that of a machine taking the scanned image and forcing the pixels on whatever text it can detect to either black or white in order to produce a high contrast optimized file. Let's look at something else. Some elements in the file are duplicates. And I refer specifically to such things, most importantly, as the two check boxes right in front of us right now. If you look closely at this box and at this box, you will find that one is an exact duplicate of the other. And they're not just plain squares, they're very characteristic. That is really suspicious. Well, the claim here is that a human being altered the document, copying a checkbox, one of these checkboxes, either this checkbox over here or this checkbox over here, in order to get rid of check marks. Then that the original document would have been a birth certificate from a twin. Probably, almost certainly, it's been claimed, one of the Nordyke twins who were born within days of Barack Obama. There's an immediate problem with the theory that this certificate was forged from one of the certificates of the Nordyke twins. And that is items such as the hospital name, the county and state, the birth certificate number, and all the extra marks on the birth certificates, all of the places where you would expect to find a match if one document had been used as a basis for another. None of these things match. They're all in a different position. They simply don't match. And personally, as somebody who works with graphics, I wouldn't simply copy a checkbox from here to here anyway. Others might. For me, it's too easy and too reliable to simply alter the existing checkbox rather than go after some other checkbox to copy over the one that you have. Particularly with the other checkbox that's a duplicate, which it's claimed was copied from a different place on the form. Still, maybe some other twin certificate was used, not one of the Nordyke twins. It is in fact possible that a human being might have done something like this in trying to create a forgery. So for right now, we'll count this as a definite possibility. What about our other hypothesis? What if a machine did this? At first glance, that would seem a little bit strange, but a software program might have recognized the pattern of pixels in the second instance as being pretty much identical to a pattern that it had seen before and just duplicate what it had put down the previous time. Or it might just use the same programming on an image that looked very similar and gotten the same results. But wait, it's not just the checkboxes that are duplicates. It turns out that there are a lot of other things in this document, a lot of other characters that are duplicates from other places. Several of the A's are identical. This one, this one, this one. Right down to the pixel. We've got E's that are pixel identical, here and here. Several of the T's are identical too. There, there, there. And the H's. Both of the ones in the number 151 are identical right down to the pixel. Once again, we have an absurdity. There is simply no reason whatsoever for any human being to have duplicated these particular letters. It would have been far, far simpler just to scan the thing in and be done with it. Especially since what we have matches scans of other birth certificates. It doesn't look like anything was done to it other than it having been scanned in. So the only reasonable conclusion is that the duplications are a result of computer software manipulating the scanned image, because computer software would have gotten the same thing under one of the scenarios that we outlined. Let's look at Stanley Ann Dunham's signature. One of the most watched videos on YouTube makes the claim that the first part of the signature is a genuine signature scan, but that the second part of the signature, after the D, was hand-drawn, definitely, pixel by pixel, by a human being. The problem with this is that Stanley Ann Dunham Obama's signature is available out there on the web. And the signature that we see on the certificate is a very close match. If you look here, here's the signature on the Obama certificate. The Stanley, the Ann, the Dunham, the Obama, everything is a match against other examples of her known signature. particularly between this one and this one. You can see her signature change a little bit over time, but still, if you look at it even further down, it's all a match. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to accurately draw a signature, even your own signature, using graphic software? With a mouse, it's almost impossible. It could, however, be possible if you had some special equipment. But why not just do it on paper and scan it in? That would be easier. Again, this fails the test of simplicity and practicality. Nobody in real life would do it that way, and particularly if they were going to scan the first part of a signature, why would they scan part of it and then draw part of it? Again, it doesn't make sense. By the way, there's a pattern here that is a very important pattern that has not been noted by anybody on any video that I have seen so far. So as far as I'm aware, I'm going to show you this pattern for the first time right here. And the pattern's this. Almost without exception, all of the characters in the document that are left as graphics, the ones that are not given the solid black treatment, either A, touch some other element in the document that is straight graphics, such as a line on the form, or B, occur at the beginning or end of a group of characters. In other words, they're positioned for a program to have a hard time identifying them as things that ought to be black. So let's look at the first part of Stanley Ann Dunham's signature, because this shows up very, very clearly here. Look at this. The Ann touches the line, which is a graphic element. The Stanley touches the Ann. This parenthesis touches the Stanley. And look up here. These letters right here, the N and the T, they touch the parenthesis. All of those elements are contiguous. So is the O and the F in the of. And all of those items that touch are in grayscale. It's also true of the I, G, N, and the A in the word signature. The other elements that are nearby, the S, the T, U, R, E, and the P, A, R, E, do not touch the graphic element or the rest of it. Also, the left parenthesis doesn't touch the other graphic elements, and just like these letters up here, it's in all black pixels. For these reasons, we can only conclude that the Stanley Ann Dunham signature was not hand-drawn using graphic software. All it takes is a program that makes items grayscale if they're touching something that it cannot interpret as being a letter, such as this line here, where this D is barely touching, and that tries to make them solid black pixels if they're standing on their own, as the rest of the word Dunham and the rest of the word Obama are. That's why those items are in solid black pixels and the first part of the signature isn't. It simply just does not make sense that a human being would have done things this way, but the treatment of the signature and of other letters in the document is consistent with machine-like treatment of the other elements on the page. Now, there are a few items on the page that don't quite fit the mold. The R in the word Barack, for example. Up here. We look at this R, and we see that it basically looks a bit lighter in color than the rest. That would seem to be consistent with the behavior of a program.